When my sister smirked at me during our mother's funeral and whispered you'll always be the broke when I didn't argue, I just smiled back, because deep down, I already knew something she didn't. And when closing day came, that smirk of hers disappeared forever. You won't believe what happened next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let me know where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Rachel, and for most of my life, I played second fiddle to my sister, Emily. She was older, louder, and frankly, a lot meaner. But somehow, everyone adored her. To the outside world, Emily was charming and confident. To me, she was selfish and cruel, the kind of person who would cut you down with a smile and make you thank her for it. I was the quiet one, the responsible daughter. I didn't cause trouble, I didn't make demands, and I definitely didn't draw attention to myself. Maybe that's why Mom leaned on me more than she did to Emily. I was always there. I cooked, I cleaned, I stayed by her side when she got sick. But you know what the family saw? They saw Emily showing up once a month with flowers and that fake smile of hers, and they thought she was the saint. Growing up, Emily made sure I knew where I stood. She'd steal my clothes, ruin them, and then laugh in my face when I complained. If I ever got good grades, she'd tell my parents I cheated, and they believed her. I once overheard her tell a cousin Rachel's just background. Like wallpaper. Nobody notices her unless she's peeling. And I'll admit, I believed it. For years, I let her walk all over me, because that's just how it always was. When Mom first got sick, I stepped in without hesitation. Emily, of course, acted devastated in front of everyone, posting dramatic captions online like family is everything, cherish every moment. But behind closed doors, she barely showed up. And when she did, she complained the whole time about the smell of the hospital, about how gross Mom's condition looked, even about the inconvenience to her social life. I tried to brush it off. I told myself that's just Emily. She doesn't mean it. But every time she made an excuse not to help, I felt resentment building. I would stay awake all night, checking Mom's temperature, holding her hand, making sure she was comfortable, while Emily was out drinking cocktails with her friends, snapping selfies with captions like living my best life. One night, not long before she passed, Mom called me into her room. She looked so fragile, so small in her bed. She grabbed my hand and whispered, "Rachel, don't let your sister's shadow make you forget who you are. I trust you with what really matters." At the time, I didn't fully understand what she meant. But those words burned into my memory, especially when I realized she hadn't said them to Emily. She said them to me. The day of the funeral was unbearable. I was already numb from losing Mom, and Emily didn't make it easier. She arrived late, as usual, wearing a designer dress like it was some red carpet event. She cried dramatically during the service, loud, ugly sobs that made people turn their heads, but not a single tear actually fell. And then, afterward, she pulled me aside, her lipstick still perfect, and whispered in my ear, "I hope you're ready to accept being a nobody, because Mom's will proves who she really loved." I froze. My own sister, at our mother's funeral, couldn't even hide her glee at the idea of beating me. It wasn't about grief for her. It was about winning. And yet, I said nothing. I smiled weakly and walked away, because for once in my life, I knew I didn't have to fight back with words. Something bigger was waiting. But before that something happened, I spent weeks watching Emily bask in her self-importance. She threw little digs at me every chance she got. When relatives came over, she'd make comments like, "Rachel's so lucky she doesn't have to worry about big responsibilities like I do now that I'm handling Mom's estate." She even told one of my friends, "I guess Rachel's just destined to be the poor sister. Not everyone can win in life." And people laughed. They nodded. Some even agreed with her. Every single time, I felt my stomach twist. I wanted to scream, to call her out, to finally stand up for myself. But instead, I bit my tongue, because I knew her downfall was already set in motion. Still, it hurts. It hurts to see my sister celebrated for things she hadn't earned, while everything I had done for Mom went unnoticed. I told myself maybe I was overreacting, maybe I should just forgive and move on. But then I'd remember the look on Mom's face that night, the way she told me she trusted me, and I knew I couldn't let Emily rewrite the story of who we were. Not to me, not to the family, and definitely not to Mom's memory. Emily thought she had won. She thought she was untouchable, but she didn't know that the ground beneath her was already crumbling. When the day of the will reading finally arrived, I was already bracing myself for the worst. Emily had been strutting around like she was about to be crowned queen of the family. She made sure to arrive in a flashy car she could barely afford, with oversized sunglasses and her favorite smug expression. To her, this wasn't a solemn occasion. It was a victory lap. I sat quietly at the long oak table in the lawyer's office, hands folded in my lap, trying to steady my breathing. The room was full of relatives, cousins, and family friends who had come out of curiosity more than concern. Everyone seemed to lean toward Emily, as if they already knew she was about to walk away with everything. The lawyer, Mr. Donovan, was a patient man with kind eyes, and I could tell he didn't much like Emily's showboating. He cleared his throat and began reading Mom's words. The first few bequests were small jewelry, keepsakes, things for cousins, and extended family. Emily barely paid attention, except to roll her eyes whenever I was mentioned, as if even the thought of me receiving something tiny was offensive to her. Then came the big part, the house. Our family home. The one Mom and Dad had built together brick by brick. Emily sat up straighter, practically glowing. And when Mr. Donovan announced that the house was being transferred to her name, she actually smirked at me. Right there, in front of everyone. That's what Mom wanted, she said out loud, as if daring anyone to challenge her. The room murmured in agreement. Nobody questioned it. Nobody cared that Mom had leaned on me every single day of her illness, that I was the one who made sure she died in peace. To them, Emily was the golden child, and the will only proved it. And then, as if that wasn't enough, Emily started pushing. What about the bank accounts? The stocks, she demanded, cutting off the lawyer. He frowned but kept reading. Almost everything, savings, bonds, investments, had been transferred into Emily's name. I sat there in silence as each line stabbed a little deeper. By the time it was over, I had practically nothing to my name. Emily leaned close to me and whispered, just loud enough for others to hear, guess Mom knew who the real daughter was. I clenched my fists under the table. My face burned, but I didn't speak. I knew if I opened my mouth, years of bitterness would come pouring out, and I wasn't ready for that yet. Instead, I looked around at the faces in the room. Nobody stood up for me. Nobody questioned why the daughter, who had given up her job to care for Mom, had been left empty-handed. It was like I didn't exist. That night, Emily threw a celebration dinner. Yes, you heard me right. She actually hosted a dinner party to celebrate inheriting everything from Mom. She invited family, friends, even neighbors, bragging about how she was going to sell the house, cash in the assets, and finally live the life she deserved. I sat at the end of the table, picking at my food, while Emily clinked glasses and told everyone about the vacation she was already planning. Rachel can visit me if she saves up enough, she joked, and the table erupted in laughter. I forced a smile, but inside I was crumbling. For weeks, I let her bask in her false victory. She paraded around town, telling anyone who would listen about how she had inherited everything. She even started redecorating the house before the paperwork was final, ripping down Mom's curtains, throwing out her old furniture, replacing it all with cheap, flashy junk. One afternoon, I walked in and saw her tossing a box of Mom's photo albums into the trash. "We don't need this clutter," she said with a wave of her hand. My chest tightened. "That's not clutter," I said quietly. "That's her life." Emily smirked. "Her life is mine now. Get used to it." And that's when something in me snapped. I realized I had been making excuses for her my entire life. I let her walk over me because I thought it was easier than standing up. But this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Mom. About everything she had worked for. Everything she had whispered to me that night when she said she trusted me. Emily thought she had won. But she didn't know the truth, not yet. She didn't know that Mom had left behind more than one will. And she certainly didn't know that I was holding the real trump card. Because while Emily was busy flaunting her victory, I was quietly meeting with Mr. Donovan, and he had shown me something that made my blood run cold, and at the same time, filled me with hope. Mom hadn't trusted Emily to handle the estate. She had trusted me, and the proof was in my hands. Emily had no idea her entire world was about to collapse. I'll never forget the look on my sister's face the morning of closing day. She walked into that office dressed like she already owned half the world, clicking her heels on the marble floor like it was a victory parade. Her smile was wide, cocky, and cruel, the kind of smile that only comes from believing you've finally crushed someone beneath your feet. She tossed her purse onto the table, leaned back in the chair, and smirked at me. "Well," she said, "don't feel too bad, Rachel. Not everyone can be a winner. Some people are just meant to watch." For a moment, I let her have it. I let her taste her own pride, believing she had beaten me. And then, I slid the folder across the table. "Actually," I said, keeping my voice calm and steady, "this belongs to me." Inside that folder was the one thing she never saw coming: the updated deed, the lawyer's signed statement, and Mom's private letter explaining why she had trusted me to safeguard her real wishes. My sister's smirk froze. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through the pages. "No, this isn't right," she whispered. But it was right. It was all legal, airtight, and final. The lawyer cleared his throat and said it plainly: "The property and accounts are in Rachel's name, effective immediately." The room went silent except for her sharp breathing. She tried to argue, tried to scream, even tried to play the victim, but the truth was ironclad. The house she had bragged about, the jewelry she flaunted, the money she thought she stole, all of it slipped right through her fingers. And as she collapsed back into her chair, her voice broke into a sob I had never heard before. "You can't do this to me, you can't." But I already had. I stood up, gathered my documents, and gave her the same smile she had once given me. "Looks like you'll always be the broke one." I walked out of that office with my head high, carrying not just my mother's legacy, but my own dignity. My sister was left with nothing but her shame, her pride shattered in front of the very people she had tried to impress. And for me, it wasn't just about winning. It was about knowing that my mom's trust had not been wasted. I honored her. I protected what she wanted, and I finally proved to myself that I was stronger than my sister's lies. So if you're listening to this, remember, people can steal, they can lie, they can manipulate, but when you stand tall, when you know the truth, revenge doesn't just taste sweet, it tastes like freedom. And that's how my sister lost everything she thought she won. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe for more true stories like this. Trust me, the next one is even wilder. And let me know in the comments, have you ever had a family member betray you over money? I'd love to hear your story. Because at the end of the day, these betrayals may hurt, but when the tables turn, justice is always unforgettable.